I am trying to replace my food with meal replacement, at least to a certain extent. So I researched all the different options available. I wanted a keto option, but there is not really a good keto option that delivers to my country. There is Health Code, which apparently is a very good option in general, because there are also lots of healthy things in there. But there also is HUEL. And HUEL, despite not being the best and healthiest option, is comparably pricey, not comparably pricey, but reasonably priced. That's the thing I wanted to state. So I ordered it. And first I ordered the sweetened versions, and these sweetened versions turned out to be very sweet and also kind of threw off my taste from the ketogenic diet before, because you're not used to sweet things as much. I then tried to mix it first with nuts, with actual nut powder you get at the supermarket, in order to achieve a keto macronutrient distribution. Now I actually switched to olive oil as the part that is the oil. Why? Or the fat. Why? Because it's just easier. So you have the shaker, and then you basically add the HUEL. And if you want to eat 2000 calories of HUEL a given day, then the thing I kind of figured out is I just take half of the recommended portion of HUEL, so basically 5 scoops of HUEL black powder, and this equates to 1000 calories, because each single spoon or scoop has 200 calories and equals to 90 grams. So what you then result in is 1000 calories from HUEL, and then you just need to add another 1000 calories from olive oil or any other oil source. You can also have nut powder, but the problem with nut powder compared to something like oil is that nut powder, or nuts in general, just have carbohydrates, a few carbohydrates, from 5 grams to maybe 20 to 15 to 20 grams. So the problem is that it skews your macronutrient distribution or ratio into a non-ketogenic or more like low carbish rate. And this is not actually what you want to do if you still want to adhere to the keto diet. So what I'm currently doing is I'm taking the 5 scoops of HUEL and then adding olive oil until the 2000 calories, which is roughly 100 grams of olive oil, actually more like 110 grams, but this depends. And also I tried to have exactly 2000 calories in total, and since I also take fish oil supplements and one multivitamin usually, what I added is exactly, so it's a little bit below 100 grams in total of olive oil. So because the fish oil also has calories, so therefore I now in my fitness pal have basically something that is exactly 2000 calories and consists out of 5 scoops of HUEL, then about 100 grams of olive oil, and additionally my multivitamin, which also has calories, and also the fish oil supplement, which also has calories. In the beginning, I had a few digestion issues. Apart from the taste issues that came with the flavored versions of HUEL, I now have only the unflavored versions of HUEL, which are not as tasty, but that's also not really the purpose of having a meal replacement. In the last few weeks, I didn't totally rely on HUEL, and also I didn't want to take this whole big risk of potentially harming my health, because I'm switching something that worked kind of well in favor of something that is basically powder and lasts for a year on the shelf. So just in terms of just basic reasoning, you think something like a tomato that is kind of fresh compares, how a tomato basically compares, or something fresh like fresh vegetables compares to something that lasts for a year and is powder. I mean, well, there are probably a lot of things we don't know about nutrition yet. Yet I couldn't not try this in order to gain back this time. This time I took basically every single day in order to cook and eat. So in the last few weeks I tried to get rid of my normal eating habit more and more and replace it more and more with HUEL. This meant sometimes I just drank 2000 calories of HUEL olive, or black olive HUEL. That's the name I gave it. And on some days I just had a normal diet, on other days I just mixed these two. Ideally, in terms of content production for social media, ideally I would do it for 7 days and then report the results, or 30 days and then report the results. But in terms of how I want to introduce this long term, I think it makes much more sense to slowly switch, because then you also slowly switch the habits, and then it is not as mentally demanding. So that's kind of the experience I currently am having with HUEL. How is the performance maybe impacting the brain power? What I realized is that there is a slight carbohydrate dip. If I take the 2000 calories at once, there is about 50 grams of carbohydrates in there. And of course not really measurable, but if you, for example, fast for 18 hours, or not, let's not say 18 hours, but let's say 1.5 days. Actually, what I find myself in 1.5 days of fasting is usually a brain state that is just a little bit more brainy. So if I think about random foods, for example, I just don't see really the point in it. Whereas if I'm more in a carb state that actually craves carbs, then what I realize often is that I'm much more influenced by these thoughts. So if you are in one of these more brainy thoughts and then you take something like HUEL and eat it, what I realized is that you get a little bit more into a carb state compared to eating something like eggs and nuts and things like these. So there seems to be a slight downside to having the carbs or having the little bit higher carbs, because let's face it, black powder is not a keto meal replacement, but it's actually much more a high protein meal replacement, which kind of works well together with this olive hack. What HUEL actually recommends is desiccated coconut, which I also tried in the beginning. So coconut basically as a replacement or as an addition in order to achieve a macronutrient ratio that is more a keto ratio, but this didn't really work with my digestion well. Maybe my digestion would have over time basically got used to it, but it didn't really. And also another problem is that the desiccated coconut is not really ground down very small, so therefore you either have to chew it still, and I wanted something that I could totally drink, because then I could just drink it and didn't have to chew it. And this seems to also cause some problems with digestion, or just in general, your body cannot really get the nutrients out of the desiccated coconut as well if they are not chewed. So that was in total kind of a summary of the current state of me trying to replace at least part of my diet with HUEL. The kind of reasoning I have in my mind, or the kind of idea I have in my mind that worked well in the past is this: I can eat normal food whenever I want, but the standard, the default, has just been replaced with HUEL.